Senator Winter, I'd have to say honestly that we did want to gather information, and I think that's what primarily we have done this morning. There has been, and just to respond a little bit on the immediacy or the changes, we have been getting lots of input.
Since one of our committee hearings where we passed out of this committee a bill that simply raised the threshold to become a major party in the state. And I listened to the comments of members of this committee, and I certainly listened to the comments and testimony of folks who came in. And I thought there is perhaps a better way. And in my view, I think that the language that I've come up with the help of staff, with feedback from the Secretary of State, with feedback from parties. I understand we have a couple of folks testifying today. I'm not sure whether they will support or not.
Originally, I was coming into this with the thought of opposing this bill, but after putting it in the context for ranked choice voting, I now strongly support this bill. I think it will be very efficient, very important for this to go through, as not to clutter the ballots when we do get to ranked choice voting.
Last May, I attempted to run for Secretary of State as a libertarian, and thus I can speak to how petitioning works in practice. Thank you, Senator Westlin, for including language to let us use letter-sized paper. This is my petition from last May.
Some of it from your party, some of it from our own party, some of it from the Secretary of State, to try to make something that makes sense. And you've heard the term elegant. We've been asked for a more elegant solution. We did have the change from 5% to 10%, and that was not received as an elegant solution.
I urge this committee to take a look at Arizona's eQual system, that's E, capital Q, UAL, for registered voters to log on to the Secretary of State's website to sign candidate nominating petitions. It's secure, it's convenient, exactly the criteria you should follow to make Minnesota a leader too.
One of the problems we are trying to solve for here is spoilers, people who decide to file under a party, and I think it's happened to all of our parties at one point or another, that someone files under a party banner that really isn't a bona fide candidate of that party, and they operate as a spoiler.
Minnesota prides itself on leading the nation in voter turnout. If the legislature is going to make it virtually impossible for there to be more than two major parties in the state, then you owe it to the voters to make it viable for more minor party candidates to get on the ballot through petitioning, and I might add, with this bill, for the major party candidates to get on through petitioning as well.
We also wanted to provide an opportunity, however, for folks who either didn't meet that threshold or for whatever reason chose not to go through that endorsing convention process. And so there is a petition process outlined here in this bill that allows folks to essentially bring forward a petition that meets the threshold requirements outlined in statute. That's another way that a person can get on the ballot as part of that party's banner.
For the 2020 election, you may recall, the state instituted electronic petitioning to address the challenges posed by COVID. The state must now extend this proven reasonable accommodation permanently. It should have done so in the last election. I encountered many households with COVID. Some would kindly ask, can you come back a week later? But what about people with permanent disabilities? I distinctly remember meeting 3 legally blind voters. Under current laws, I'm permitted to assist them to fill out the form, but they should have the dignity of filling out that form on their own. And I have no business, as a stranger, asking them to tell me their age.
It costs me a lot more money in gas just to try to get those signatures. So anything we can do to help address that issue would be very much appreciated, because right now the current law does feel like it discriminates those in rural Minnesota from participating to the maximum.
My last comment pertains especially to voters and candidates in greater Minnesota. The 2-week collection window is tough for any of us, but it's exceedingly difficult for those to collect signatures in rural areas in that time frame. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I also went through the petition process last election here in rural Minnesota, and I do agree with Chip. I mean, when you're talking about petitioning here in rural Minnesota, it is a world of difference between me trying to collect 1,000 signatures door to door when your houses are a mile away compared to when you can go through one block within the cities and talk to 1,000 people.
I have come to this with sincerity. I have come to this really wanting to try to provide a better solution to a problem that, at least from my perspective, we had identified.
So we're looking for something that was a little bit better, but I think the objective was for both parties to avoid having the incidence of spoilers.
We've seen what happens in Minneapolis with their version of ranked choice voting, where you have 8 to 10 candidates from one party, and when it comes down to debating, the third parties or the other candidates never get a chance to get on stage because they're filled with the candidates from those two major parties.
I wanted to come to this committee with something that was responsive to the hearing we had previously, and I had hopes for bipartisan support. I think we have support from other parties, and I hope that at some point I might convince or cajole you into supporting this measure. But if you have ideas that can make this better, I have said this all along. Every time I've presented a bill, come talk to me. Let's go through the language, point out where we can make some changes that will make this better. I say that with sincerity. I do believe this is a good bill, and I guess if I do offer it as an amendment tomorrow, I guess people will either vote it up or they'll vote it down. But I hope that if you have any questions, you'll come to me first, and maybe we can reach a consensus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Westlin.
If I have time, one last thing I would like to address is, when I was picking up my signatures last year, one of the issues I had was I was actually having people try to take photographs of the petitions as I was collecting it, and those photographs were then reported to me have been used to go and harass the people who signed my petitions. I did not appreciate that. We made some public comments of it at that time, but I feel we do need to do something to protect those who do sign our petitions, to prevent them from being harassed by committees of the major parties, who is accused of doing the harassment. Thank you very much for your time, and again, I appreciate the senator's effort to find an alternate, less obstructive answer to your concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And what I have to say is that your last testimony actually improved the bill. So we're looking at anything we can do to improve our bills, improve the work that we do in this committee. And I guess I am a little bit distressed by anyone who would harass someone just because they signed a petition. That's not the way Minnesotans should act. So we do want to make sure that that doesn't happen with any kind of movements that we can do. So thank you very much for your testimony. Senator Westlin.
Mr. Kagan, I appreciate your remarks, and I will be happy to consider that, and I would certainly love to have some more conversations with you. I think you raised some good issues. I'd like to have some more conversations just to sort of take this out to its conclusion, but I do appreciate you raising these issues today and your participation.
Thank you.